So of course the local elections went brilliant for Reform. They took seats from everyone. They absolutely cleaned up in all parts of the UK except for one little area. And I guarantee there'll be one thing keeping Nigel Farage awake at night, and that is not just people delving into his dodgy finances, but that is Restore Britain and Rupert Lowe. Now, how Restore did in these local elections was something I was quite intrigued to see, as I mentioned in my first video, because there's a lot of groundswell and a lot of noise online, but we've not seen any sort of electoral things put into practice, so we didn't know what it was going to be like actually on the ground. It's all well and good looking strong online, but when it comes down to the votes, could they get the votes they needed? Now, just in case anyone didn't know, Restore Britain only targeted a small amount of seats, and that was 10 in Great Yarmouth and the surrounding area on that council. There was also a by-election in those 10 seats. And that was mainly due to the fact that they've only been around for a couple of months, and the amount of time it would have taken to vet all these people properly, to represent them across the UK, they just didn't have enough time to do it properly, so they concentrated in their base where Rupert Lowe is an independent in Great Yarmouth and said, we're going to get everything right here and we're going to use this local election as a blueprint and a plan moving forward into the rest of the years to come and heading towards the general election. I said in my previous video that I thought if they get 8, that would be good. That would show that people are interested and that at least in their area people are taking them seriously. And I have to hold my hands up, I was wrong, because they didn't get 8. They had 10 out of the 10 seats they contested. And that is not just an impressive feat in itself, but they were basically non-contested everywhere, because Reform were the next people in charge. They were getting between 10 and 15% of the vote, but Restore Britain were getting from 50 to 51% of the voters that turned out for these local elections. And that is an absolute landslide. It actually turns out if half the people didn't turn up to vote, then they still would have won their seats, which is crazy. And with Nigel Farage saying he won't get more than 1% when it actually comes down to it, he made himself look a little bit silly, because 51% of the vote for one of the seats is absolutely insane. And it's not just that they've managed to convince voters of other parties to come and vote for them and give them a go. The actual voter turnout was up massively, nearly double from the last time there was a local election, which actually backs up the point that Rupert Lowe has made, saying, we're not just trying to steal voters from other people. We're getting told by a lot of people that they've never voted before, and they're coming out for Restore because they think this is the only party that they can trust, and people are mobilising at a level that we haven't seen for a long time, if ever, in British politics. So to me, this just proves that it's not just an online phenomenon. It's actually people are willing to come out. When they were doing their canvassing the weekend prior to the local elections, there was people from all across the UK, people coming down from Scotland to help out because they wanted it to be proven that this could work in Great Yarmouth, so now it can be rolled out across the UK, because people feel that Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain and his team are our only hope to restore the country, hopefully back to the greatness that it once was. And the amount of stuff I've read online of people saying I voted for Reform as a placeholder because Restore Britain weren't on the ballot, and I literally read hundreds of those comments underneath videos of both Restore and Reform. Now, don't get me wrong, it is not all sunshine and rainbows. It's sort of easy to prove in one area where there's a stronghold of a candidate that they can get people to win an election in that area. Now the difficulty is going to be to roll out all over the country, because yes, the general election is in 2 to 3 years, depending on when it gets called. But that is not a lot of time, really, when you consider they are going to have to build these branches across the UK. What I will say, though, is that they've already started. There's actually now hundreds of local branches popping up all across the UK. I checked today, there's 2 in Wales. If you're in South Wales, at least, then you want to get involved, you can go on Restore Britain's website, and there's one there for you to go to. And I think Rupert has been super smart in picking his team, getting a lot of young guys involved. There's lots of energy, lots of passion. There's a demographic that we're seeing coming out and doing this canvassing and voting for this party that maybe have just not bothered before, or that doesn't necessarily usually come out and vote and stand for a political party, which is really exciting for them as a party. What I hope now for Restore Britain is that now they've won, they've got a bit of a foothold, and they start rolling out across the country, becoming more popular. They'll should theoretically go up in the polls. They're already doing well, depending on which one you look. They're going from anything from 4% when they're unprompted to 9% when they are prompted. And that 4% you have to bear in mind is people are saying, I'm voting for another party, and physically typing in Restore Britain on YouGov, which, that's effort that people probably wouldn't usually make anyway. So I think that is a massive positive for them. I think it would probably be more somewhere in between now, but when you think they've had no mainstream coverage whatsoever, what they've managed to achieve just by building up online and getting these branches spread out across the UK is pretty impressive. What the challenge will be now is the attacks will almost certainly come. We've seen Ed Davey comment on something Rupert Lowe posted on X. We'll also guaranteed to see Reform make little attacks and try and play down how big Restore Britain is. And you just know if and when Rupert gets on these TV shows, GB News give him a little slot for an hour with Jacob Rees-Mogg, which was obviously important to spread the message, but they also cut a bit out when he was talking about Nigel Farage, making up stuff about him to try and get him arrested. So even the right-wing media is not giving them the platform that they probably deserve now. And what will be interesting is to see who is the first big channel that gives him the platform and sticks their head above the parapet and brings him on to grill him effectively, because if he's going on BBC or ITV or Sky, they're going to be trying to tar him as a racist, as a far-right extremist, and how he navigates that and his team navigates that is going to be an interesting thing to follow along with. For now though, for Restore, it's going to be more about people spreading their message online, in person, and I'm going to do some more videos moving forward, diving into their policies, saying what I think's good, what I think's bad, and seeing if they've really got what it takes to actually restore Britain back to Great Britain. Thanks for watching and subscribe.